Mark, welcome. Great to see you again, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So let's dive straight in. Cannaland, cannabis. It's a vibrant, very, very interesting sector. Why cannabis? Why now? What's Cannaland all about? What are you trying to solve?
Well, I guess it all started when I tried to apply for a medicinal cannabis license to grow cannabis in the Isle of Man. And to cut a long story short, due to the lack of power on the Isle of Man, it is an ongoing process. But in reality, it was just due to the general cannabis reform that's sweeping across Europe. When we look at Europe compared to the US, we're probably, 5 to 7 years behind the US. And it's just been a hobby of mine. So exciting space. I thought to myself, how can I create something that would actually make sense both in the real world as well as the metaverse and connect those two, solve a problem? And I think that we are in a position in the future to help solve people's problems, from buying something in the metaverse to having it delivered in your home.
And how does that work? I mean, it leads me into the question of the choice of technology. It's again, this is a very exciting sector. You've gone for a brand new technology.
Yeah.
What benefits does this serve? I'm putting the two together.
We plan to go from Web 2, which is the traditional online platform that everyone is used to today, where you go into a web store. Basically, you order it, you pay for it online, and you have it delivered at home, whether that be from Amazon or any of the other typical shopping channels. So what we plan to do is we plan to have e-commerce ultimately in the metaverse. And in the metaverse, it will just mean the fact that it's much more interactive. So we're planning to have a dispensary in the metaverse. And that would mean that someone putting on a pair of VR glasses would actually have a visual image of a dispensary. And with their avatar, they would be able to go into the dispensary, be met by a bud tender. That bud tender would then ask them whether they're there for medicinal purposes or for recreational purposes, and then you could go through. Simultaneously, technology is going so quickly, you might be able to put a pair of gloves on. Those gloves will enable you to pick up a product, turn that product round, look at it. We're also working with a very innovative young scientist that's created a product that can convert smell into digital back into smell. So you would have to have a small little gadget box next to your computer plugged in, and you could actually smell what you're buying. This is what we're working on. We're trying to bring a rounded experience that would enable people to purchase, whether it be a CBD oil, whether it be a prescription medically, or whether it just be something that you want to take for recreational purposes. And that could be either smoking, that could be to make food from, or gummies. There's a multitude of things out there.
So is education then a major tenet of the business model for you guys, to use the fact that you have the metaverse, you're not restricted by geographical legal legislation to where cannabis may or may not be legal, may be semi-legal, but the sommelier service, if you like, so that people can discover more about the potential of the plant?
So although cannabis reform is technically moving at quite a pace, we still have a number of restrictions from not just the states and states within the states, but of course European countries. So what will happen is your avatar will be verified. It'll be verified, age verified, and basically verified as a person, so that your avatar from then on, someone will know that your name is such and such, your address is such and such, and your age is such and such. You'll then be geotagged. It's incredibly important when you consider what's happening in the States at the moment. It is legal to order in the States from one state to another, providing that both states are pro-cannabis states. You cannot order from a state that's not legalized yet from a state that is legalized. And it's the same in Europe. You can only buy products, of course, that are legal within that destination. So at the moment, of course, if you were to buy something, you don't buy it on our platform. You would be taken to a dispensary that holds a license to sell cannabis-related products, and you would check out there. It answers the question about education. Education is a vertical that will be one of the main verticals, I would say, of Cannaland, alongside the branding and, of course, the advertising, giving products an opportunity to display themselves. But education, particularly from a medicinal purpose, because if we just take the UK, getting a cannabis prescription in the UK is extremely difficult. That requires that you go to your local GP, and your local GP then has to refer you to a specialised GP. But getting past your local GP is a huge problem because of their lack of knowledge of cannabinoids, and just the fact that it's new to them, and they're not going to prescribe something that's outside of their own knowledge. So it's getting people to be knowledgeable about what cannabinoids can and can't do. And that's a long process. It's an educational process. And that's what we intend to do. We intend to have a platform within Cannaland, and that platform will be called Cannaland. And it will be for the general public, it will be for cannabis connoisseurs, it will be for doctors, and of course, it'll be different types of platforms within platforms.
That's quite interesting, Mark. So, I mean, you mentioned the States, you mentioned Europe, you actually mentioned also the medical sort of sector in the UK, and lack of knowledge being one of the major sort of inhibitors, along with perhaps big pharma failing. This. How big is the marketplace do you see? I mean, looking at this from an investor's perspective,
the marketplace is massive. I mean, if we look at the US now employs more than 450,000 people in the cannabis, or in a cannabis-related environment, which is massive. It's massive when you consider that, if you can employ that many people, countries, of course, will benefit from taxation. If we look at the UK market, if we look at Europe and markets that are still quite virgin, they say that the medicinal cannabis market in the next 5 years will be worth somewhere in the region of 3.3 billion. That in itself in the UK would create over 80,000 jobs. Recreational, which is, of course, as we all know, is not legal in the UK, but potentially if it was legalised, that market size would be over £20 billion. So as you can see, this is a considerable market. And it's not just about cannabis. It's about medicinal cannabis. It's about wellness. It's about industrial hemp. It's about recreational. So there is a huge, huge market. There's a captive market. It's not just about someone smoking a joint. It's a lot more than that.
Thanks, Mark. And as Hilton mentioned at the beginning, your token, CNLT, is already... Can you tell us a little bit more about the token, where it's listed, and ultimately what owners of a token can do with it?
Absolutely. Well, we're listed on 2 exchanges at the moment. We're listed on Uniswap, as Hilton mentioned in the beginning, but we're also listed on Bitmart. For anyone interested, they can go to cannaland.xyz. You can purchase, there's a link on the webpage where you can purchase the token. The token was released at 12 cents in the last quarter of 2022. It's presently trading. It's found a mark around 26 to 30 cents. So pretty constant, quite stable. The utility at the moment doesn't exist. But what has just been announced, and people can read again on the website, is we've just announced the property sales. Property sales are launching on what we've now called 420, which is quite a significant number in the cannabis circles. Not a lot of Europeans are going to understand it. It's a date, but the American way, so the 20th of April. And the doors will be open to actually buy digital land. So you can go in, you can buy a digital sign, you could buy a dispensary, you could buy a piece of land, you could build a house. There are any number of things, as creative as you want to be. And of course, depending on the size of the plot or the number of pixels that you want, will determine how much land sales will be. But land sales will be simple. There will be an app connected, so you will be able to buy your tokens, your CNLT tokens. You will then be able to go into the app and purchase, just like you would anything else from your telephone. And then you would have a piece of land in there. We've partnered with Paxworld, who is building the metaverse. So we're building the first island, which will be funnily enough, it'll be shaped like a cannabis leaf. And each of the prongs on the cannabis leaf will be one of the verticals that will underpin the business and, of course, ultimately create revenue for the business. But as far as the token is concerned, we're hoping that it'll be a naturalized token that people will use, both in e-commerce later this year. Fourth quarter, we're hoping also to have some games introduced into Cannaland, where people will be able to play to learn, play to earn, and they'll be able to actually start getting utility from the token. Big things. Ultimately, we would hope that in the future, the Cannaland token would be, of course, the token of choice as far as cannabis is concerned. When we see that there's a little bit more deregulation and when it's possible to actually purchase, we would hope to make arrangements with dispensaries that would accept the Cannaland token. But of course, that's a challenge in itself. There's a ways to go. We're trying to do things, of course, as correctly as possible. Of course, that takes a long time. You know, we're against a mechanism, of course, that has caused negative connotations for cannabis, both politically and financially. And so, you know, beating down the doors to actually get to the heart of the matter has taken people years. It's cost people lives. You know, people are sat in prison because of this leaf. And we happen to think that there's no reason to be sat in prison. Legalize it, and governments then they can generate revenue. They can create jobs. There's a reason. There's a purpose behind this.
On a couple of points already, but my final question really for today was, what's the roadmap for Cannaland for 2023? What can we expect during the course of the next few months up to the end of the year?
Well, we're looking at a major listing. So we hope to list on a major listing either the end of quarter 2, beginning of quarter 3. Of course, as I've just mentioned, land sales, the 20th of April, they will go live. We're hoping to create a little bit of a splash there as well. Towards the end of the year, we're hoping to be opening the metaverse, or at least the transitional Web 2, Web 3. So this year's a big year for us. This is not something new. We've been at this for 2 years. So there's been a lot going on in the background. It's a huge project. It's not a project that will be completed in 2023 or even 2024. It's like anything. You know, if you're going to build a house, you've got to build the foundations first. And if you don't build the foundations solidly, then the house is going to fall down. So, you know, we're taking it a step at a time. We're trying to do things as correctly as possible. And of course, at the same time, we're navigating a political and legal system that is just unfortunately against us.
Understood. And I think I would take my hat off to you. You're taking on some incumbent powers, but the opportunities, I think, here across the board, as you've outlined, are significant. And what I take, personal sort of comfort from is the caution with which you're approaching this business. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme, but one, founded on genuine benefits of a plant and an honest attempt to explore how you can help people understand and make better use of it. So Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure listening to you today, and we will certainly be catching up perhaps after, around the April the 20th mark that you mentioned.
Right.